welcome to this episode of the Martial Truth Podcast, my interview with Les Bupka. Les is a martial artist originally from Poland, now residing in the UK. We've been friends for several months. I appeared on his podcast several months ago. He wrote an interesting book called The Anxious Sensei, which highlights his difficulties with anxiety growing up and how the martial arts helped to cope with that and help him to overcome those fears. So it's an interesting interview. I think it'll be good. His book is very good. It's on Amazon. It's not a long book, but it's really interesting. And I'm sure there's many of us out there and people that are out there that have experienced the same type of anxieties. So I think it's a good subject to cover and how we can use martial arts to help people with their mental health. All right, so hope you enjoy it. As usual, please click that like, share, and subscribe button. Consider becoming a monthly member. While this podcast is dropping, I'll be in New York teaching my last day of seminars there. All right, so I'm sure it's going well. Hope it's going well. All right, and again, Walt Young seminar this coming October. All right, I'm going. A couple of my students are going, so hope to see some of you there. Please consider coming out and supporting it. It should be a fun weekend. All right, so here's Les Bupka. So Les Bupka, welcome to the Martial Truth Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So those that don't know, I was on Les's podcast several months ago. Les lives in the UK, in Europe. Started in somewhat traditional martial arts. Interesting. He is traditional based, but he also does a lot of out of the box thinking. So I like to think we kind of think along the same lines with certain things, which is good. He's also had some challenges in his life, and he's written a book called The Anxious Black Belt, which is available on Amazon, which I highly recommend. It's great. It's not a very long book, but there's a lot of important things in there that I think would help a lot of people out that might be dealing with some same things that Les dealt with more when he was younger and figured out ways to deal with it as he got older. So why don't you talk about a little bit about your struggles and how that kind of progressed and how karate and martial arts in general helped you with that?
Yes, thank you very much for a very kind introduction. So when I was little, I'm coming from the working family, Poland, during the communist times. My dad comes from a very long line of alcoholism. So he was introduced to because he was a butcher and he was a son of a village hall, like a mayor, like a small
Yes.
mayor.
Yeah.
So he had a lot of privileges. And at that time, he'd been trading lots of things like meat and stuff, and the currency was alcohol. So if you haven't drunk, then you haven't made a deal. So everybody who
Okay.
came to exchange meat for sweets or whatever,
Right.
you have to drink with them. Plus, at the time, it was kind of believed that if you drink, you're more truthful. So then you can find the people who work for government and try to snitch you up. So in that way, since 14, he's been drinking alcohol. So I believe that his family never shown much of appreciation and showing emotions to other people, right? Talking about mental health, completely
Right.
not allowed. Get
Right.
on with it. Sort yourself out. So we never been praised. My brother and I never been praised for achievements, but it's been a lot pointed out for our mistakes.
Right.
And my dad never really hit us or physically assault us, but mentally he was tormenting us with, you never let you forget your mistakes,
Right.
right? There was no time that you done a mistake, it's forgiven, go away. It always come back.
Right. There was nothing you could do everything right and he'd find something wrong with it. And
Exactly.
I just want to mention this. So my father died from alcoholism.
Mm.
So I have the same and when we first got married and we're going to start having kids, we went to a genetic counselor and the genetic counselor warned me, said, "You have the gene that makes you predisposed for alcoholism." For
Mm.
whatever reason, I never drank. So even as a teenager, I never drank alcohol. And to this day, I still don't drink alcohol. So it's interesting that we both our fathers both had that same problem, you know. So
Mm.
so continue with
Yeah,
your yeah,
yeah, for me as well. I really quickly learned like 17, 18, we start drinking that. My dad used to get very aggressive but very mouthy.
Right.
Because I started doing martial arts, yellow belt, you think you are
Right.
the best martial artist
Right.
over the world.
Right.
I'm very small, so after alcohol, I used to try to pick up the fights, especially with the biggest people trying to prove. So I very quickly learned that it's not very healthy for me, so I stopped drinking.
Right.
Um, and then I haven't drunk for 10 or so years. And then when I moved to UK, I drank a little of the beer, one, two, to never get drunk, but socialize. And since we've got our son, so that's over 8 years, nearly 9 years, I haven't touched alcohol because it was like, if something happens and I drink one beer, I can't drive really in UK.
Right.
And therefore, it's no point. If something happens, I need to be available. I'm a father. I need
Right.
to be responsible. And I don't miss it. I totally don't miss it. But going back to the story, so being put down, I haven't been very good at school because I had a dyslexia, or I have dyslexia. So school was like, oh, I go somewhere, let's do something else. That'd be better for me anyway. Plus, few things happened that I managed to let in a burglar at home. At that time, 7 years old, you had a key on your neck, off to
Right.
school, back to school. Parents are in work, they have to work to pay bills. And somebody targeted me. I didn't understand at that time. So,
We have the same thing here. We call them actually latchkey kids.
mm,
They're called latchkey kids. And I was that way too. I would walk home by myself from school because both my
mm.
parents worked. So yeah, back then that's the way it was. So,
And yeah, and so, somebody must have picked me up, seeing me and doing the same thing. I suppose I was very trusty kid. So he was telling me, my dad was into cars. He loved cars. He said, "Oh, I'm friend of your dad." Okay, we start chatting. He said, "Oh, your dad meant to give me a car battery,
right.
but he's not here." I said, "Oh, he's gonna be back." Oh, but I can help you look for it at home. And I let them in. And they eventually caught that guy, so he stole some money from my parents and stuff like that. But that was a huge reason that my dad really was not happy with me at all, and it dropped my self confidence because then they caught the guy. We went to the court. I appointed somebody completely else, and my dad was again, "Oh, you didn't
Right.
recognize who you let in."
Right.
But when it happens, you don't pay attention. You're a child,
Listen,
so
I was a police officer for 22 years. I mean, we'd have people point out, I arrived at a scene one time and a woman goes, "That's him. That's him over there. He's the guy that
mm,
robbed me." I go running after the guy. I chase him. The guy fights me. I get him in handcuffs. I bring him back over and she goes, "Oh, that's not him."
mm. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it happens. In the heat of things, it's hard. You think you see one thing and you see something else.
Mm. So that was one of the things. Then plus, in my family runs that I don't know, maybe genetic or something. So I lost lots of my teeth. I take care of them. I've been in dentist since I was 7 years old, but I lost half of my teeth by 15 years old. They couldn't put the proper dentures in because my jaw is
You're too
growing.
small, right?
So, yeah, going out and trying to have a girls at 15 years old when you don't have a teeth is a bit of an
Yeah, it's
achievement.
a little
So
stressful, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
so that all knocked me down, to the degree that I wouldn't go and do shopping and try to avoid school completely. Um, I become a class clown just to kind of prevent myself being bullied. So if I can bully myself, nobody else gonna be bullying
right,
me, right?
right,
So in that way, and by pure accident, one of my friends was in karate club, and he said that, well, I think you should go with me. So I went in there. That was very stressful. I was always, the biggest fear was fear of judgment.
right.
So when the group of people start laughing, you immediately thinking, oh, they're laughing
It's
at
you.
me,
They're
right?
laughing at you, right,
Yeah, yeah. So that, our brain is the worst enemy of ours
right,
in that situations,
right,
because you over exaggerate everything and everything is pointing at you. We're all thinking that we are center of the attention. But when I start training, I had an hour and a half of break because it was hard. You said I'm from traditional background. I'm not really. I'm from Kyokushin. That's not
Well,
not.
Kyokushin is still a traditional style. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
it's out of Japan. So I mean, they wear gis. So but yeah, their
yeah.
approach is different, but it's kind of
It,
traditional.
yeah, it depends who you ask and
Yeah,
what people opinion.
yeah,
I don't want to upset people that I'm claiming
yeah.
something that is
That's all
not.
right.
But yeah, you know, it was hard physical training. We spent hour and a half, really hard physical thing, and that gave me a complete freedom. Didn't have time or energy to think about all the other stuff happening, and I kind of got addicted to it. And then different challenges, competitions, demonstrations, and stuff like that. So
Well, it's interesting because I would say the same thing in the dojo. Like I would tell people that were maybe going through a rough patch in their life, and that they'd come to me and say, "Hey, I got this going on, or I got that going on, so my head's not in the right place." I'd say, "Well, you should keep training," because I say often that when you're in the dojo and you start training, you don't have time to think about the stuff because a guy's punching at you or a guy's swinging a
yeah,
weapon at your head. And you can't be thinking about the bad thing when that thing's coming at your head, right? So you have to react to it. So your brain gets to kind of shut off the bad stuff for that hour, hour and a half of training, which I think mentally is a great thing. Like I always used to tell people that when I walk into the dojo, no matter what negative thing I've got going on in my life, once I get in there and I start training, I can't be thinking about that because I'm in the middle of teaching, I'm in the middle of training. So I found that for my own mental health, I thought the dojo was almost like a safe space. Like I could go in there, train hard, but I wasn't thinking about any of those negative things that might be going on in my life. So,
yeah. If somebody tries to punch you in the face, you don't have time to think then about anything else, and
right,
that becomes kind of meditation on a higher level if you
right,
think about it.
right,
You know, when you know that you're in a safe space, you know nobody's gonna take your head off, and you start sparring, then you've got that time of being safe
right,
but not thinking about other stuff,
right.
right? You need to focus on what you're doing. So that helped me a lot, and from that, I never thought I'm gonna be living in different country. I was afraid going abroad. The first time I went abroad, it was my teacher told me that we're going for a seminar to Germany, so that was my first trip abroad, and I was scared. I was scared. What's gonna happen? I don't speak English, although I
Right,
learned some American English.
right.
But you lose confidence and stuff like that. But from that, they asked us to organize seminars. So my teacher said, "You're gonna be good for that." I nearly pooped my pants from
Right,
the stress.
right.
But I really enjoyed it, and I become addicted to overcoming my challenges. Um,
So one of the things, having been a police officer, right, and risking my life hundreds of times and working with other people that risk their lives, so it was interesting seeing the reactions of some police officers. So some police officers would come out on top and they would maybe think negative. Like their thought process was, boy, I got lucky. Boy, that
Mhm.
could have gone bad. I could have been killed. Where other guys, and this is the way I was, is I was always positive. I was like, oh, that worked out great. I got the bad guy. I didn't get hurt. Everything worked out great. Yeah, of course. Could it have gone another way? It could always go another way. But I found that the guys that were more positive in that, they were able to handle those severe stresses that we have being police officers. Whereas the other guys, you would see the stress kind of build in them, and they would have more difficulties dealing with that job. And that's one of the things that's always a problem with that job is the stress that's on you.
Mhm.
It's stress. It's like being in war. I mean, the stresses are it's just not normal, right? And you're doing it year after year after year. If you learn how to handle it, you come out on top. And what happens in New York is when you get ready to retire from being a police officer, you have to go and get your heart checked. And even a guy that's in really good shape, exercises all the time, eats right, he'll go and they'll tell him you've got a heart problem. And when the guy who's exercised all his life, he eats right, he's in good shape, he looks at him and says, Doc, look at me. I'm in great shape. How could I have a heart problem? And the doctor's response is always the same. Do you know what job you've been doing the last 20 years? The stress is on you. It's not just mental, it's physical stress. And that mental stress affects the heart. So so again, if it turns out they have a heart problem, they actually get a better pension. They get a better retirement package
because the heart was damaged because of the stress of being a police officer. So yeah, people don't realize that just how severe mental stress can be and how it affects people physically. You know, mentally is one thing, but it even affects people physically, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, you feel that you see that in kind of outside of the very stressful work like yourself and firemen and
Right.
or firefighters, I should say, being politically correct.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, if you go on a competition, you can see how people get traumatized, upset tummies, sweating, palms, you know, erratic behavior, just because you're stepping on the mats and something that you are not used to it happens, right?
Right.
So I, like you said, the people who, and I learned that late, way too late, that your mental attitude shapes what happens.
Right.
Because I found out that because I've been negative, I've always been worrying that what's going to happen. Usually, this self-fulfilling, I sabotage
Right.
myself to happen,
Right.
right? I convince myself that's what's going to happen. But since I flipped that 10, 20 years ago, everything's actually working for me fine.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting? You see it in testing also.
Mm.
So like my New York school, which has I have black belts with me almost 40 years, right? And they're great martial artists, but they're terrible test takers. Like they get so nervous, they get in their own head. Meanwhile, when I see them in class, it's no problem. They do everything great, you know? And one of my guys who's not a very good test taker, we were going to Japan to test. So we had to pay
Wow.
for flights to Japan and test in Japan. And I was building him up because I'm like, okay, this is a lot of money. You don't want to fail this test. You're
Hmm.
flying there, you don't want to fail this test. And he didn't. He tested twice and passed both times. But it's always interesting to me. And then and then other people, it's the opposite where, they do okay in the dojo when they're training, they're pretty good. And then on the day they test, it's like, where'd this guy come from? Like
Yeah,
he
yeah.
looks so good. Like, okay, you got to do that all the time, But it's fascinating how it is. It's fascinating how the mind works and how it affects us. A normal class, everyone's good. And oh, by the way, you're testing next week. I'm testing next week. Like you said, now they're thinking about it all week. Now they're stressing out. They're forgetting things that they've done a million times, no problem. So like I always say, when I test somebody, it's not just about that day
Mm.
because I've seen them so many times do the stuff in class. So if a person, is not a good test taker, I don't hold that against them. Why would I hold that one thing against them? Oh, he made three mistakes, so he failed his test. It's just to me, it's just dumb, So as an instructor, I take that into account. That if a guy's not a good test
Mm.
taker, well, he's not a good test taker. And that's just part of
Yeah,
that's his thing. So
yeah. We changed in our dojo about 4 years ago. We do a assessment, so we got a month of assessment when
okay,
people usually don't know. And for a black belt, we've got a display day, so they can on a ceremony of awarding the black belt, they do the display to show the best version of themselves. But they've been tested before, so
yeah, and we do what we do
it's
is we don't
nice.
even we don't even call it a test. We call it initiation.
Mm,
Like you're
that's
you're
nice.
you're you're being now you're coming into the group of black belts,
Mm,
and it's physical, but it's only about an hour. It's not, my Shodan test. My first instructor was not a good guy. He was not a good guy at all, and he's dead now. But I mean, my Shodan test was brutal. I mean, brutal. At the end of it, I was literally green. I have photos of me, and I'm literally green.
mm,
Um, you know, he really knocked the hell out of me. And all because a month before one of the other guys had tested, and he was a terrible test taker, and he didn't look good.
mm,
Like in the middle of that guy's test, he tore up his black belt certificate. But this was a guy who always said, "Well, it's not just about that day," and then he's making it about that
mm,
day. He passed the guy, but then the next night at class, he comes up to me. He goes, "You're testing next month, and you better be ready because I saw what he looked like, and it's going to be tough. You're going to have it tough. You better be
mm,
ready." I'm like, "Okay," and it was tough. I mean, my parents walked out at the time. My girlfriend, who's now my wife, her parents walked out. They walked out during my
mm,
test. They felt it was like ridiculous what he was doing. but the way I look at it is I survived it and, I came out of it. But it also taught me that, when I went to Okinawa, um, Master Shimabuku had me test for third degree black belt. And he only had me do 3 kata.
Hmm.
He didn't beat on me. He didn't have, and then I realized, I said, and I saw other testing in Okinawa, whether it's Kobudo or other things, and even in Japan, we did some of the other testing. I was like, oh, how come they're not abusing their students, right? I know Kyokushin, their tests are rough. I know they're legendary rough, right? Which again, I don't understand that either. But for myself, I changed the whole way I do testing. I mean, I don't want the guy at the end of the test to not be able to walk or be so beat up. Like, what's the point? What does that prove? He's up there to demonstrate that he's reached a certain level of skill and welcome to the group of black belts. That's basically it. That's the way I look at it. So,
Yeah, for us, my teacher quit Kyokushin before it was fashionable. So
okay.
from 1986, we've been completely independent. And our test wasn't like that. My hardest test was actually for brown belt when we had to spar for an hour and a half. So like you said, you just
Right.
being carried back. But in a way, I was expecting to have a super tough black belt test, and it was kind of a modular one, hour and a
Okay.
half. Went through everything with a teacher, external teachers, and kind of because everybody was hyping how hard it's gonna be. It was like,
Right.
well, I'm a little bit disappointed now, but
Right.
I'm happy I've done it.
Right.
But I think everybody's building that expectation that you put that black belt and suddenly the heaven's gonna open, you're gonna be enlightened, now you know everything, and it's not literally nothing changed, right? You just got a different belt hanging.
Well, it's funny when said this in other podcasts, my first instructor would always say, at black belt, you really start to learn. Okay. So I make black belt and now I'm thinking, okay, now I'm really going to start to learn. And he never showed me anything after black belt. And when I went to Okinawa the first time, Shimabuku Sensei saw me do kata and said, "Why are you doing kata like a white belt?" And I said, "Well, this is how everybody does it." And he goes, "No, no." And then he started showing me, "No, you're a black belt. You have to start moving like this." And then I realized there was different levels. So that if you have a good instructor who really knows karate, well, yeah, after black belt, he should still be showing you a lot of stuff. Like it shouldn't be where, oh, now you just practice yourself. Like when I made black belt, it was like I was on my own. Okay, figure it out. But like the people that train with me, like I went to New York 6 months ago. I'm going to New York again next week, but I went 6 months ago. I taught a workshop and I showed some techniques. And the one guy's with me 35 years. He comes over to me afterwards. He says, "I've never seen a couple of those techniques." He says, "I've never seen those before." And I said, "Well, I hope so. I hope there's still stuff that I'm doing that you've never seen, and concepts I'm teaching that you haven't gotten yet, right?" But yeah, I felt the same way. That's why we don't we try to downplay first degree black belt a little bit.
Mhm.
I find a lot of places make first degree black belt like that's almost the goal. And
Mhm.
then a lot of people quit. Oh, I got the black
Exactly.
belt. I got the black belt. Okay, that's it. I'll just quit now. Not realizing that if you stick around, you'll really see how much more there is to martial arts. And again, not just the fighting stuff. I'm talking about the whole big package of martial arts. So, yeah, I always find that funny with that kind of stuff and what they people
Yeah,
emphasize.
I think as well it's the media, because
Mm,
everywhere you see it's that black belt. You achieve
right.
the black belt, you're the master. Oh, he's a black belt. So it's kind of the portraying. But you're right. Yeah, people treating it like sort of like a driving license.
Right.
I achieved the black belt. I don't have to do anything more.
Right.
And then you go on the road, and it's like, oh shit, I can't drive. I just
Right.
passed my test, right?
Right. Right. Well, it's the same thing too. You get the
So,
guy that makes black belt, but thinks now, well, okay, now I'll open a school.
mm,
And maybe he'll be successful. I mean, I had my first school, I think I was Shodan. I taught 2 nights a week at a sports and arts center. Um, but I like looking back now, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I knew I was
mm,
learning as I was going along, right? But you see some guys make black belt. Oh, they're going to get a storefront and they're going to open up a full-time martial arts school, not realizing
mm.
that most of those fail. I mean, most of them do not stay open, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so it's interesting, and But so what are you doing exactly now? How are you training now? What are you incorporating? What are you doing?
Complicated. So I've got several programs and I'm working on more programs. So we recently had a change. I spoke with my students what they want from karate
Uh-huh.
because we are doing like all around karate. So I like MMA, I like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
Right.
and the guys who came in are not very traditional. So we still got like opening ceremony using Japanese names, using karate techniques, but we're building up a groundwork, but more focused on standing up, right? So you know what's happening on the floor.
Right.
To get up, stand up is our stuff.
Right.
So that's my main session, main group. I've got my elderly, so we're doing kata for a mental health. What we're doing kind of like a Tai Chi. I don't know Tai Chi,
Right.
so we're doing a slow meditation kata.
Okay.
This is very popular with my elderly group. I'm working with people with mental health issues for the charities.
Okay.
So we've got a 8 year now a program going, which is very popular. Alongside their proper therapy, they coming in and have a session with me doing karate or meditation or
Okay.
whatever they need. Plus now we've got a year of funding for our own karate for mental health program when people
Okay.
drop in for free during the day. Maybe there are parents. Look, I've got few parents who've got the children with severe autism,
Okay.
so they cannot do anything else. So they come in and can smash the pads and have
Right.
some of the release. Now we've got few programs with our local government doing exercises for elderly with dementia
Okay.
and like chair bound. So it's
Sure.
exercises like katas on the chairs and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And Tuesday, I'm going to speak with it's called Lockwood Center. They invited me to see if I can do some program there for children, which I'm not really keen on teaching children, but I said I will try to
Okay.
do. Plus, we just started a knife mitigations program that's
I
teaching
saw that.
somebody
I
else.
actually I saw your post on Facebook, so I saw that you were
Yeah.
doing that.
So I'm not interested in self-defense, but we started a Karate for Mental Health community interest company where we get funding from a government and stuff, and we can do programs. And I think with UK being you've got gun problems, we've got knife problems.
Oh, I
Uh,
think so. Here's what I'll tell you, being in law enforcement and doing the research on this throughout the years. So knife is everywhere. Knife problems are everywhere. Yeah, we've got gun problems here, but the interesting thing with the US is we don't have gun problems with legal gun owners. The
mm,
legal gun owners are the
yeah,
most
yeah, yeah.
law-abiding citizens there are. It's the criminals that get the illegal guns. And the criminals, sadly, if they don't get a gun, what do they get? They get a knife.
Knife.
I mean, they're
Mm,
always carrying a weapon. Um, so yeah, so that's always been a big part of my program. I do a lot of knife work, defending against the blade. That's what I'm actually teaching in New York next week, and I also teach gun disarming. So I also do
mhm,
that too, because again, you do have more guns here, and on occasion the criminal does have a gun, and he'll put the gun on you to try to rob you. And there is ways to disarm them. I mean, there's no question about it.
mm,
I interviewed a Filipino knife instructor on the channel a few months ago, and he agreed with me that if you're fighting someone who's armed with a knife, it's going to be tough. You're probably going to get cut, but you got to work something. He goes, you got to
mm,
practice something. If you don't have any idea how to deal with it, well, then you're basically finished. Um, I see a lot of martial arts instructors that go, oh, that's too dangerous. I don't want to teach that to the students. Okay, well, what
mm,
happens when your student gets attacked with a guy with a knife? He's just going to stand there and become a pincushion? You know,
mm,
you've got to train and teach him something. So I think it's important. I mean, I know in my own dojo here, it's an important aspect of the training. So,
mm.
you know,
Yeah, we incorporated. So, like I said, I'm not a specialist in that area, but we incorporated drills as a warm-up, your
Right.
pocket, my pocket, grabbing,
Right.
controlling,
Right.
try to use your body as a leverage and stuff like that. So something have to be, right? But I'm not promoting go and grab the knives and do that. Stay
Right.
away from it if you can,
Right.
but if you have to, you have to, right?
Right.
Same. That's all the principles of
Well, that's all.
self-defense, right?
That's all. But that's always the principle, right? I mean, we saw a change when I first was in law enforcement. We would teach that if someone held a knife on you, just give them the money. And I teach them in my self-defense classes back then too. But then we saw a change in the criminal, where the criminal would then cut the person anyway, even if they gave them
Mhm.
everything, they'd still cut them. So then we had to take a step back in what we were teaching and say, hey, listen, if you don't think he's going to hurt you, just give him your money and hopefully he walks away. But if you think he's still going to hurt you, well, you're going to have to try something because he's going to cut you anyway.
Mhm.
And we took a few police reports where the victim said, I gave him everything he wanted. He wanted my cell phone, I gave it to him. He wanted my watch, I gave it to him. And then he slashed my neck anyway. And the victim was shocked. It was like, I gave him what he wanted. Why did he slash my neck? And, I tell people he did it because he wanted to, because he likes it. Criminals don't think like we do. They have their brain is wired very, very different. So even here, we've had to change a little bit our approach to teaching certain subjects because the criminals have changed. They've gotten more violent. And I know knife crime in the UK is through the roof.
Yeah, it seems to be, especially in my area, it's not that bad,
No,
but in
right,
London, it's kind of a initiation and a badge of honor if you stab somebody.
right,
So yeah, I've got a boy. He's 8 years old.
right.
You see the news that 11-year-olds carrying
Carry a
knives
knife.
to
Yeah,
school. So I want to be able to teach him something. But if I'm not aware, I need to educate myself. Therefore, we're doing the series of workshops that I can jump in as well and learn
yeah,
myself.
yeah,
So I've got something in the repertoire to pass on to my kids.
yeah. And the thing is something is better than nothing.
Mm.
So when I was 10 years old, I was walking back home, and three guys robbed me. One guy grabbed me from behind, and first they came up to me. And one guy said, "Hey, do you know so and so?" And I said, "No." And I kept walking, and he grabbed me from behind and dragged me to the side of a building. And the other guy came up. First, he put the knife in my throat, and then he had the knife in my side.
Mhm.
And I was a little kid. What I think I had 36 cents in my pocket. So I handed
Mhm.
them the 36 cents, and they let me go. But that kind of woke me up, right? Even as a kid. And I said to myself, man, I don't want this to ever happen to me again. So, a few years later, I turned 15 and I said, okay, I've got to learn to defend myself. And that's what brought me to karate. And then, the fact that for me, the way I look at it as, karate has enabled me to save myself and to save hundreds of people as a law enforcement officer. I mean,
Mhm.
recently I had one of my old uh, police officer guys that work with me in the same command send me a very nice message saying that, Mike, when we knew when you were working that we felt safer, that if it really hit the fan and we were in trouble, that you were going to somehow get there and you were going to help us, right? And it made me feel really good that after, because I'm retired 15 years already. So,
Mhm.
that he still remembered that and took the time to send me that nice message. But so the way I look at martial arts too is it's given me so much that's why I want to give back to it.
Mhm.
I want to teach people to get in better physical condition so their health is good. I want to teach them self-defense so they can protect themselves. So it's amazing the vehicle that martial arts can be if it's done right.
Yep. Yeah, this is the problem that unfortunately martial arts and sports are very easy places for a power abusing and people abusing people to hide. And you've got access to the victims, and usually the people who coming in to the karate classes are not the super confident people. That's the vulnerable people.
Right.
So although I'm advocating karate is good for mental health, it's only when you've got a good instructor, right?
Right,
Yeah. If
right.
you go to the bad place, it's gonna ruin your mental health
Well,
even more.
my first instructor was terrible. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I stayed there 10 years, but I started at 15. So I became a cop at 24. By 25, I was out the door. I mean,
Mm,
I was like, okay, and you know, and I'll just tell you what he said to me the last conversation I had with him. I sat in his office and I said, "Hey, I'm taking a leave of absence." And I was a
mm,
full partner in the dojo. I had money invested in the dojo. And he said, "For how long and starting when?" I said, "Starting now, and I don't know for how long."
mhm,
And then he starts going into this diatribe where he's talking. And at one point he says to me, "You know, God asked Abraham to kill his only son." And I turned and looked at him and I said, are you equating yourself to Abraham, or are you equating yourself to God? And I said, if you're doing either, you've got a much bigger problem than I think you do.
mm,
And of course, I never went back. And the next several years, he tried to destroy me. I mean, he tried to destroy my life. Now, everything he did backfired on him, but you know, again, you look and you say, you know, why is he that way, right? Because again, people propped him up
mhm,
instead of saying to him, "Hey, knock that off. Don't you shouldn't be doing stuff like that." No, they propped him up. Oh yeah, keep going. Oh yeah, do that stuff, right? They fed into his ego, and yeah, you see it a lot in martial arts. People do it for the wrong reason, you know. Um, an author wrote a story years ago where he goes, Joe Schmo is a truck driver during the week.
mhm,
And he's a good truck driver. He's a great truck driver. He's really good at being a truck driver. But he feels that that's not like an important job. So what he does is, you know, he goes down to the dojo and he puts on his red belt and he goes and he teaches karate and everybody calls him master or sensei or whatever. And boy, there he feels like he's really something special, right? And I remember reading that thinking, "Oh, yeah, I've seen a lot of guys like this."
mm.
And those are the guys that it's a problem. Like they're doing it for all the wrong reasons, and there's way too many of them out there. Way too many of them out there. You know?
Yeah, but I think it's starting changing, especially with the advent of internet. You can
Yes.
have a look, people putting the reviews and mostly they're honest and it's starting to get better. The one thing I see now, a lot of people is willing to educate themselves,
Right.
both in educational stuff, right? When I started teaching in Poland, you had to go for a government recognized instructors course. You have to have a minimum of that, and then you can go to the university,
Right.
have an education degree and stuff like that. But in UK, it's a free market. You get a belt and go and teach. So
Right.
there's a lot of people that don't know how to do it, right?
Right.
And now, so that's one of our company's goals is to educate people on mental health. We created something called a Karate for Mental Health toolbox. So based on my experience and education in mental health industry, we created a course that is specifically for martial artists that they can see on a specific example how to behave and how that benefits other people. And it was consulted with the people who actually have mental health issues. So it's kind of tie up with that second book I sent it to you, the
Right.
Karate for Mental Health. So people can buy it for £30 and educate themselves on where to report it, how to spot the mental health issues, and so on and so on, and realize that we are not therapists, so you don't need to help everybody.
Right.
You just need to say that hey, maybe you should go and see somebody,
Right.
or if it's very severe, you can contact somebody and say, hey, maybe a parent or somebody. I think this is kind of off. Let's have investigate that and try to fix it, right?
Right.
But you are not the therapist, so you're not going there preaching
Right.
that you need to meditate 3 times a day and breathe
Right.
for
Right.
7 hours and stuff like that. You just need to be aware of the signals, which is a really common sense. But as you know, it's very difficult if you're not aware something to implement it, right?
Well, the other thing is it depends on the type of school you're in. So if
Yeah.
like in the States, if you're in the school that all they're interested in is signing up new students all the time, they're not really getting to know the students. They're kind of
Mm.
they're just like, it's one right after the other. Um, when you have a more traditional school like I do, where we don't get a lot of new students, but a lot of the ones that come in and join, they stick around. Um, you get to know them, and you see if there's a problem somewhere. Excuse me, if something's bothering them, and maybe you can help them or direct them to do something. When you're not really, when you're the guy that owns the school and you're not interacting with all the students, it's really hard for you to get a feel for what's going on with
Mm.
the different students. I had about a year ago, I had a woman come here, didn't speak much English, spoke Spanish, and she walked in with this big guy, he's about, I don't know, 6'1", 225, 230, big. And she goes, could he try karate? And I said, sure. And she left.
Mm.
She didn't tell me that he was special needs. So he's 26 years old, but he's about 6 or 7 years old.
Mhm.
He's nonverbal. He doesn't talk much. Every once in a while, he'll say a full sentence, but he doesn't talk much. So I kind of recognized I trained a lot of autistic kids and kids with other type problems. So I pretty much right away realized, okay, she didn't tell me, but obviously he has some special needs. And he did the hour class, and she came to pick him up. And when she walked in, she said, how did he do? And I said, he was fine. Oh my God, she says. She says,
Mm.
he can do this? I said, yeah. And she signed him up. He's been here about a year. He's been promoted twice. Now, does his kata look like the other people's kata exactly? No, but I would tell my guys in New York, it's very easy to teach the student that is athletic and has it all together. Those people are easy, okay?
Mm.
What can you do with the guy who's really physically uncoordinated? What can you do with the guy that has some problems here? Can you do something with him? Like if you can make him good, okay. Then I'll say, okay, then you're a sensei. Then you're a sensei. But the guy that's an athlete, that's got it all together upstairs, okay, anybody could teach that guy, right? So he's been in the school about a year, and it's interesting seeing how he interacts with the other students and how they interact with him. Um, they always other people look to help him out. So it's good. And what I do a lot of times is because he's a little tougher to deal with because he doesn't understand. I pair off with him. So here I am, the so-called 10th degree black belt promoted from Okinawa, but I'm paired off with the special needs guy where the other people are paired off with each other working. This way,
Mm.
I work with them. And it's humbling too in a way. It
Yeah.
keeps you humble. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't allow you to think, well, I'm this umpteenth degree black belt. I shouldn't have to work with someone like that. I should only work with the super athletes. No, it should. And I'll just tell you this too. I went to Okinawa one year, and one of the guys that came didn't do karate. He was one of my jiu-jitsu students. And we were
Mm.
training at the Ishinru headquarters dojo with Shimabuku sensei. And the first night we're walking to the dojo, he says, hey, sensei, do you think I could train while I'm here in Ishinru? And I said, sure. I'll just tell sensei. It'd be no problem.
Mm.
He goes, okay. I said, maybe he'll ask you to join the association, but his association's lifetime membership. You pay dues once, you
Mm.
never pay it again. It's $35 lifetime. You pay it once, that's it,
Mhm.
you're in. So he didn't even ask him to do that. So I said, Sensei, this is Tim. I said, he's one of my jiu-jitsu students, but he'd like to do Ishinru while he's here. He says, okay, yeah, no problem. So we bowed in the class. And who taught Tim the basics?
Mhm.
Master Shimabuku, the head of
Sure.
Ishinru. He took him on the side, and Tim at one point says to me, he goes, Sensei, Master Shimabuku's teaching me the basics. And I looked over at Shimabuku Sensei. I said, Sensei. He goes, yes. I said, Tim's worried that you're teaching him the basics. So Shimabuku
Mm.
Sensei laughed. And I said, I looked at Tim. I said, he's the headmaster. You don't think he knows the basics? He could show you the basics, right? But it's also good for people to see that, right? Because they think, oh, the headmaster, he's only going to teach the really high level black belts.
Mm.
He's not going to work with the beginners, right? But here he is working with a guy who's never done Ishinru. So it's important, I think, for people to see those kinds of things, and it keeps your ego in check, which I think is
For
very
sure.
important in this martial arts world.
Yeah, I've got a very similar story to yours. We've got a Danny. He's with us 11, 12 years. Autistic as well,
Okay.
functional autistic. But when he came in, he wouldn't be on his own. He had to be with his brother and mother.
Right.
He wouldn't go anywhere. He wouldn't chat to us. He didn't know left for right. Now he's the pass his black belt last year or 2 years ago. Sorry, goes competitions without any support. We just go with us as a lads. Goes to barbecues. Actually tries to talk to us. Obviously, he doesn't get all the jokes because
Right.
he takes
Right.
everything
Right.
literally.
Right.
He's not the. I don't know how to say. I hate saying that, but he's not the same quality. His movements are not the same quality, but the attention to details in the movement is different.
Yes.
So his kata looks different, but he knows more. If I say the more movements,
I
so
had it.
it is really, really, really empowering, and it's nice to see the other guys. And I think that what I spoke with his parents, the thing that works for him best, being treated as everybody else. He trains
Right.
with everybody in the
Right.
dojo, moves around, have to
Right.
deal with everybody.
We had a guy come and join. The father brought him in. He was about 12 years old, and he wouldn't even look at me. He looked down like this the whole time. And the father said, I'd like to sign my son up for karate. I said, sure. So I look at him, I go, what's your name? He won't even look at me. So then the father says to him, he says, Justin, tell him your name, right? So he told me his name. And so he joins the dojo. We start teaching the basics. Really won't talk to us. Um, doesn't say hello. So first thing I say, okay, Justin, when you walk in the school, say hello. Say hello to everybody.
Mhm.
And we started working on him. And the father would initially the father's walking him there and then picking him up. And a few years go by, and he's like 16 now, 17. Um, and the father I hadn't seen the father in over a year because he's older now. He's walking to school by himself. And the father pops in. He goes, "Hey, Mike." I says, "Hey, how you doing?" He goes, "Good." He goes, I said, "I haven't seen you in a long time." He goes, "Good." He goes, "How's he doing?" He asks about his son. I said, "Oh, he's testing for black belt in a couple of months." He looks at me and goes, "What?" I said, "He's testing for black belt in a couple of months. I got him. He's helping me teach the kids classes." He goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "He's helping me teach the kids classes. If a new
Mm.
person comes in, I have him teach them the basics in the adult class." He's like, "He never talks about it at home." I said, "Well, he's doing really well." So at the black belt test, his parents came. The father was beside himself. He eventually made third degree black belt, and then he moved to Malta. He was Maltese originally. He moved back to Malta. So he was on the spectrum, but high functioning, brilliant guy, engineer. But, initially socially wouldn't even look at you, wouldn't talk to you.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, by the end, I got him teaching the kids. And it's funny. And you telling that story about your guy made me remember this one. I would watch him teach the kids, and he would talk like a professor.
Yeah.
And the kids they'd be looking at him like hanging on every word. But he taught them so correctly, like, and we would laugh about it, right? But the kids loved him. They just loved him, right?
Mm.
And so like I say to people, he was one of my greatest success stories. Not again, his martial arts were very good, but because of the man he became. Like
Mm.
he became a guy who joke around, have a conversation with you. Now, again, different from other people, but still, to see the path he went on and how successful he became, it's just amazing, you know. And those are the things that are so important, you know. So,
Mm.
you know, and those are the things I think that are the most rewarding with what we do in terms of teaching, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've got few people in my mental health project that they come in, they don't pretty much don't talk, but they're there for 8 years, every session.
Right,
And you're
right,
just thinking like, am I doing something wrong?
right,
Or you
right,
just don't want to talk to me. So
right,
that's all right. You're
right,
here, hi,
right,
bye.
right,
But it does something for them good because they keep coming back.
right. Right. Like Ruben, the kid we had, the man, he's 26 here. Every time he opens the door, he says hello to everybody. When he's leaving, he says goodbye to everybody. Sometimes it's funny. Sometimes after I bow out to class, he fist bumps everybody. He goes over and fist bumps
Mm.
everybody. So it's interesting to see how he gets more and more comfortable here, you know?
Mm.
And, can I get him the black belt? I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm going to give it my
Yeah.
best shot. And again, he's not
Yeah.
going to look like the other black belts. But my thing is when you have to deal with the issues he has to deal with, if he gets to a semblance of black belt, I think that's a bigger accomplishment than the guy that has no issues, right?
Exactly.
You know?
I had the same thoughts, and I had to say that I hesitated based on my own problem of judgment. Again, that
Right.
kicked in after years
Right.
because I thought people gonna look at him and gonna be harsh on him, and it's gonna be harsh on me because he doesn't look like your average black
Right.
belt, right? But the amount of work he put in through that last 10 years is justifying his black belt.
Right.
And I don't care what people say
Right.
technically. He knows the kata, he do them different. He knows applications. He
Right.
can spar with everybody in the
Right.
dojo on every session.
Right.
He took for him going to competition, the kata competition, is a huge challenge
Right.
that most of us never gonna experience.
Right.
And literally yesterday, he decided he wants to have a fighting competition, so he wants to do sparring.
Okay.
I have to arrange some
Right.
equal, so it's fair for
Right.
him. But why he shouldn't have a black belt? So he's wearing proudly. I'm very proud of him, and he's a kind of a business card, or like I don't know how to say it in English. He represents me outside, right?
Right. He's like
And I think he does a great job.
he shows what kind of school it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My first instructor, if a woman joined the school, he looked at that she was a woman to be a conquest. So the only woman he didn't try that with was my girlfriend when she joined. Um, but I remember seeing any woman that joined, if the woman lasted 2 months, it was a lot because he was all over them, right? And when I started my own school, I decided that there would be some serious rules. And the
Mm.
single men in the dojo that were instructors, I'd say, look, if you meet a woman here and you hit it off and you want to ask her out, that's fine. But within these walls, there will be no indication. It will be professional. If
Mm.
it's not, you're out. And even my wife trained for years. And there were times when people joined the school, they didn't realize she was my wife for a couple of months
Mm.
because in the class, we kept it very professional. And when I went to Okinawa the first time, because I had all these bad examples from my first instructor, I had a lot of questions for Shimabuku sensei. And I said to him, Sensei, what about a woman who joins the dojo? And he goes, it's different. I said, well, so and so said they have to be as strong as a man. And his response was, well, how could a woman be as strong as a man? He said, it's just stupid. He says, women are different. You judge them by themselves. I said, same with children. You can promote a child to Shodan, but don't compare him to an adult Shodan. He's not an adult Shodan.
Mm.
He's a child Shodan. You can have a person that joins the dojo that's 70 years old. Okay, they can't make black belt. Or why? Because they're not as fast and as strong as a 20-year-old. So he gave me this explanation where basically he said, everyone's different. He goes, not every black belt is equal. Like,
Mm.
this idea that you have to beat a black belt to be a black belt. Okay, so then there's only one black belt. I mean, some of the stuff's just ridiculous. And you get some guys that are just naturally talented and gifted, and they're phenomenal martial artists. I mean, physically they're amazing. Okay, but you get another guy who's got to really work at it. Okay, so who's more impressive when you think about it? The
Mm.
guy that it came
Exactly.
too easy or the guy that really had to struggle and work at it? So I think there should be, like I say all the time, I have a range of a standard. So my Shodan
Mm.
standard is this, right? And you have to fall within that range. Now you get the super athlete, the guy's amazing. Okay, yeah, so he's at the higher standard. You get the person that maybe has some mental health stuff or whatever, autistic or whatever. They're older, they're physically not as strong. Maybe they have bad knees, whatever. Okay, so they're maybe on the lower standard. But again, who has had to struggle more? Probably the person that's down at the lower standard. So again, I think I don't think martial arts is used enough as a vehicle to do
Mm.
good things, you know?
I'm sure there's a room for improvement, but like I said, from at least from the UK, I see a huge improvement in educational stuff and taking care of the students.
Right.
It's stopping. There's still like a cult organization that don't go there,
All
don't
right,
do
right.
this, you
You're
can't do
always
this,
going to
right?
have that. Right.
But but I see it's growing that people are well just common sense, right?
Right.
I'm coming in here, I'm trying, and people are more understanding, right? We all
Right.
have some sort of issues and stuff like that,
Right.
According to our old syllabus, I shouldn't be black belt at all because I cannot do Mawashigiri Jodan because of my hips. If my sensei been strict with the rule, I would never pass the green belt.
Right. But so a woman in the first school I trained in with the first instructor, she had been in a very, very bad car accident in
Mhm.
Europe. So she spent like 6 or 8 months in Ireland recovering. She almost died. So eventually she came back to the States and she started training again. But one leg was a little shorter than the other. And so I watched one of the black belts showing her the last move in Shinto and when you drop down to one knee and punch. And she couldn't stand up afterwards.
Mhm.
And she didn't like me that much. And I'm on the other side of the dojo. And he's screaming at her. You have to be able to stand up. You have to be able to stand up. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, but she can't stand up physically because she has damage to her body now. So after he stormed off, I could tell she was upset. I walked over and I said, okay, get down on one knee. And she got down on the one knee and I said, okay, do this. And I showed her and I said, now stand up. And she stood up, no problem. And she looked at me, her eyes got big and looked at me. And, was it exactly the way the kata was supposed to be done? No. Okay, but if someone has a physical handicap, isn't our job to help them to figure out how to actually do the move? Okay, like, oh, you can't, no, it's got to be exactly this way. It's cookie cutter. Everyone has to be, no, that's bullshit. Because it's not like that on Okinawa. I mean, not in the Isshin dojo I trained in. I mean, Master Shimabuka would show you a few different ways to do different moves. He'd say, "Oh, these are all you could all do it like this." But yeah, I find it interesting. Like you say, you have a physical handicap, so you can't do something. Oh, well, then you can't make black belt. What? That one thing? Because of that one thing, I can't make black belt. You know, yeah, it's ludicrous to me. I don't understand where the thinking comes from.
Well, I think it is, unfortunately, at least the European, we could have said in Poland that, especially in relation to states, right? There's a lot of Polish people going to states,
Sure.
and somebody went for a couple of weeks, comes back, and he speaks with the accent already. He's forgetting Polish words. So we say he's more American than Americans, right? And we see that same in relation to Japan, right?
Oh
People
yeah.
taking it over, blowing it over. I need to be more like Japanese. And I've got a really good friend, Sensei Akemi. She's a calligrapher.
Okay.
She's super famous calligrapher. She done the Olympic
Oh,
in
okay.
Japan, all calligraphy. And she said to me once, "It's nice you're doing all this traditional stuff because in Japan nobody cares." It's like well, yeah, we are more karate people than karate people in Japan, right?
Right. Right. Um,
So,
it's true because you know, most people in Japan aren't really interested in doing these arts anymore.
hmm,
They're just not. It's not that popular there. It's just not that popular. It's much more popular in the West. But I think the problem is you're right. I think a lot of Westerners try to be more Japanese than the Japanese.
hmm,
I had an Aikido guy who was renting space in my school in New York. A very nice guy. So he said to me, "Hey, could I have my Aikido sensei come in and do a seminar on a Saturday afternoon?" I said, "Sure, you can use the space." I said, "I'd like to meet your teacher, so let me know when he's coming. I want to come over and introduce myself." Um, Hagahara sensei. And so he came in. I came in. I introduced myself. So I took my jacket off, and I had my gun on my hip. You know, I was still working as a police officer. I had my gun on my hip, and so they took a break. So he brings Hagahara Sensei over, and he introduces me, and we're talking, just talking like two regular guys. No, like, oh, I'm Hagahara, and you're no, just.
Mm.
But one of his students came and sat on the bench. Guy was completely head shaved, right? And Hagahara, after we're talking for him, he says, "Hey, what make firearm is that?" He wanted to know what type of gun I was carrying. I said, "Oh, it's a Glock 17, right?" He goes, "Oh, that's supposedly a really good gun." I said, "Yeah." I said, "It's an excellent gun. It's an excellent gun for police work, right?" He goes, "Oh, you know." And he turns to the guy and goes, the guy was like a volunteer police officer, which some places have that. They have it in Phoenix too, where they do
Mm.
carry guns and everything. So he says, "Oh, what do you carry?" And I forget what gun he said he carried. But then, and the guy goes, "But guns shouldn't be in the dojo." He goes, right? So Hagahara, the Japanese sensei, looked at him like, made a face at him like, "What are you talking about?" Right? So then I
Mm.
stepped out and I said, "Well, the owner of this dojo sends a lot of people to prison,
Mm.
and a lot of them don't like him. So in this dojo, guns are welcome." Right? And
Mm.
then I looked closely at the guy. His arms were completely shaved. His gi was open, no chest hair. He had completely shaved all the hair off his body. And he was talking in a way like it was almost broken English, like he was trying to be Japanese. And
Mm.
I kind of looked at him and said to myself, okay, this guy's nuts. Like this guy's
Okay.
nuts. Like he's trying to, live in a fantasy world. And it's the same thing when I first started Japanese swordsmanship, I was 16 years old. And I just wanted to learn how to use a sword. But I'd get there, there'd be guys in a locker room tying their hair up in a top knot. And I'm 16. I'm looking at these guys like, why are you tying your hair in a top knot? Like, do you actually think you're a samurai? Like, I'd just
Mm.
be like, what are these guys? And it's funny, the instructors didn't do that. They didn't act like that. But yeah, it is funny how sometimes martial arts attracts a certain kind of guy that's a little bit out there, in terms of his
Yeah,
thinking,
well, I very often compare martial arts to, especially karate, or maybe traditional ones, a little bit like a church.
Mm,
You know,
yes. Yes.
this is our religion, and we need to bring it to the other people,
Right.
and they need to conform to what we do because we're the best.
Right.
And I think that's kind of, that was the mentality of 70s, definitely in Kyokushin, that we are the strongest
Right.
karate.
Right.
We need to educate everybody else,
Right.
and we need to be the best. And
Right.
and I think that's very common within the martial arts structures, or maybe it's just like a military, you know, uh,
I think it's a little of both.
progression.
I think it's a little of
Mm.
both. And then the same thing too is you get it can become a little cultish
Mm.
where you have this figure who's put on a pedestal. Like I attended a seminar one time, and this wasn't the guy who did the seminar. He didn't do this, but the owner of the school who brought the guy in for the seminar. They had run an article on him in a newspaper. And I watched him walk back and forth up and down his dojo while one of his students read the article to him from the paper. And as he was walking, he was like this.
Mm.
And I remember looking at him going, man, this guy's got a problem. Like this guy's got a big ego problem, right? And and some of my students have said to me, like they'll come with me when I teach a seminar. And they'll say to me afterwards, they go, Sensei, boy, some of these people look at you like you're a god. And
Mm.
and my response is always, yeah, don't you see that's a problem? That's a problem because guys take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And it creates a whole world of problems that have nothing to do with martial arts, you know? So, but
Yeah.
you know,
I think that as a species we are more geared to be followers than leaders. So you've got only a small percentage of people who actually want to take risks and do stuff own way. And if that is a something that other people admire, it creates that cultish relationship when people not necessarily are forced to behave like that, but want to behave like that.
right,
And I see that a lot in karate.
right. My Kobudo sensei had a stroke He turned the association over to somebody else, and I stayed in for a short time. But the guy that took over was basically the same as me, and now he's in charge of the association. Now everything's going to change. Um,
Hmm.
now the curriculum's going to be this. Now we're going to charge this for black belt. Now we're going to do this. We're going to do that. So after a few months, I said, take care. I'm out. And one of the things I've discovered, I'm in my 47th year of doing this stuff. So I've had a lot of experiences, good ones, bad ones, everything in between. But I've learned that if I'm in a situation that is not a good situation, I walk away. I feel um big enough where I'll just train myself then. If where I'm training is going to be a toxic environment, or it's going to be about where all these people are given black belt certificates so I can go to Okinawa 3 times a year, and all these people are getting promoted and all this, and I'm like, okay, I'm out. I'll just train by myself out here in my dojo. I'll teach whoever wants to learn from me. I'll be happy to teach you. But it's one of the things I say all the time. People ask me, well, in your association, I said, no, I don't have an association. I have students. I don't have an association. No one pays me yearly dues. I don't have an association. I have students. So if you train with me, you train with me. If you don't train with me, that's okay too. I practice by myself. But I think a lot of the people that wind up being in charge of associations, um, they lose sight of what's important.
Yeah, power corrupts, right?
Yeah,
So that was one of the questions I've been asked quite often, that, in what way karate supports mental health? Well, karate is like money. It amplifies who you are. If you are power-driven person who wants to take over the world and you've been given that power, then that's gonna be. If you're a
right,
genuine person and you've got lots of money, you possibly gonna be do more good work.
right,
So the same whether you get the black belt or become a head of association. If
right,
that's your core, then it just amplifies it.
right. It's true, and it's the same. One of the other things that Shimabuku Sensei said to me all those years ago. He goes, "The dojo goes as the head instructor goes."
Mm.
He says, "If the sensei is a good person, then he'll attract good people. If the sensei drinks too much, well, he won't get students. If he eats too much, if he talks about karate but doesn't practice himself, he won't have students." So he said to me, you have to set the example, and it has to be a good example. If you set a good example, your dojo will be great. And that was the best advice I gotten, because it was right after I'd left my first instructor, that bad experience. And here I got a guy giving me great advice. And I said, all right, I'm gonna listen to this guy. And it was great. And that's all those years ago. And my journey since then has been very rewarding, you know. Um, but yeah, it's always interesting to see how the power, the funny thing is, Les, it's fake power.
Mm.
I mean, what power does the karate guy or the martial arts guy really have over you? Like, what's his power? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, he only has power over you if you give him that power. Like when you have a job, like I was a police officer. All right, I'm getting paid from the city of New York to protect the citizens. The
Mm.
city of New York has power over me. They could fire me from my job. Okay, that's something that has power over me, okay? But if you think about it, the martial arts instructor, what's he going to do? Threaten you with excommunication from the association? Oh, we're going to make sure that your black belt gets revoked. How does that even happen? It's funny. They have this idea that they have power over people, and really, there's no power. There's only the power people give them. You know?
Exactly. But that comes back to the cultish behavior
Right.
of most of the people, right?
Right.
We like to glorify people, look at all the actors and stuff like that.
Right.
People will die to just see them, right?
Well,
Or be in their presence. So,
I'll give you one. I lived in the political world for 5.5 years. So I was in charge of Senator Chuck Schumer's security detail for 5.5 years in here in the States. And he's a very high level politician. And I literally, after I was there a short time, I would tell people, it's like people used to worship God.
mhm.
and now they worship politicians instead. Like they think these politicians are the new gods, and they think
Hmm.
these politicians really care about them,
Yeah.
but they don't. They only care about one thing: getting reelected, getting more power. And
Mm.
seeing how people um, acted towards the senator, it was eye-opening to me. Like, okay, this guy is just a guy like everybody else, but they would talk to him like, oh my God, he was like this. And I'd be like, huh? I don't think so. Um, so it's interesting because again, in martial arts, we do see that, and it's a huge problem. Again, I think, like you said, I think we're seeing less of it because I think with the internet and the fact now that people have access, and also the fact that there's more schools, and if you decide not to train at a place, and the guy says, well, I'm going to blackball you, and you're not going to be able to train with
Mm.
anybody else. How are you doing that? How are you blackballing somebody? If someone comes to me and says, "Listen, Sensei, I'm not going to train anymore," I say, "Okay, great. Look, it was great having you as a student. Good
Mm.
luck with your life. Take care. You're always welcome back." But as he's walking out the door, I'm not thinking I'm going to ruin that guy or I'm going to do this. And I mean,
Yeah.
what is, you know, I don't get it.
Yeah, you wish everybody the best, right? I keep saying to my student, I like to introduce my students to lots of different arts because my philosophy is I rather have a friend who is really happy doing what he loves than a mediocre, unhappy student who wants to please me in my dojo. So I always, I'm bringing lots of people to my dojo. Try this, try that, see what happens. Learn from this. So my students know they don't need to ask me for permission to go train somewhere else.
Well,
I
I
encourage that.
I
So.
do the same thing. Someone would come up to me and say, "Hey, Sensei, so and so is coming in. I was thinking about going to a seminar." Yeah, I'd go too, but I'm working, so yeah, you guys can go,
Mm.
and they'd go. And sometimes they thought it was good, and sometimes they learned, oh, it wasn't, what they thought it was going to be, and that's so they
Mm.
learn for themselves. Not that I'm telling them what to do. No, oh, Sensei, I'd like to train in this. Okay, let me see if I know someone that teaches that, and maybe I can put you in a direction. Yeah, the first school I was in, I was told at one point I wasn't allowed to train anywhere else. And the only person that affected was me. All the other black belts were yes men, and none of them were really training the way I trained. And I was the only one training in another art at another school. So when they said to me, "Well, you're not allowed to do that anymore," I literally laughed. And they was
Mm.
like, "This isn't funny." I said, "Oh, I think you guys are very funny. Because if you think I'm not going to go train at that school, this is America. I can do whatever I want."
Yeah.
Like, so I think when you start putting those restrictions on a student, I think it shows a lack of confidence in yourself.
Yeah. All stems from insecurities.
All stems from insecurities. No
My
question
my
about
friend
it.
says, don't go there because they might be more awesome than we are. So.
Right. Right. You know, I mean, I would love when I went to a seminar and the guy was really good and he taught a lot of really good stuff.
Mm.
Like I would just I'd get so like up like afterwards. I was like on cloud nine, like, oh my God, that seminar was,
Mm.
a couple of years ago, I attended a seminar out here. I actually taught a couple of sessions, and then this Filipino martial arts group came in and taught stick fighting. And I paired off with one of the instructors the whole time, and it was great. I mean, oh my God, I came home, I told my wife, I said, I had so much fun. And so I inquired, is there anybody near me that teaches through you guys? And they said, yeah. And I finally got around to it a couple of months ago. I finally reached out to the guy and I said, hey, what day do you teach? And, I may only be able to come once a month. Is that okay? And they're like, yeah, you come whenever you can come. And, uh, and I started training in Filipino martial arts 2 months ago. And it's great because now I'm like a beginner. I don't have to go there. I don't
Mm.
have to be Mike Calandra. I can just be Mike, the guy that's learning stuff and not having to, you know, and it's great. And they're really good. And, I'm loving it. Um, so, yeah, I think it's good to, I think that also helps it's always important to keep that beginner's mind,
Yeah.
not where you
Yeah, I've
think you
got
know everything,
I've got the same. I started BJJ nearly a year ago. I'm the white belt. I can train
Yeah.
only once a week, so I'm on
Yeah.
the very bottom of the pile.
Yeah.
But it's something very liberating wearing a white belt. And like you
It's
said,
the
I'm just
greatest thing
less,
in the world.
not sensei. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the
yeah.
greatest thing in the world. Because again, as soon as you put on that black belt, there's an expectation,
Mm,
you know? Um, the New York school, you have a lot of very senior black belts, people out of training 30, 35 years. And then you have people that are, made black belt a couple of months ago. And it would always be funny to me when I'd see a person who was kind of new to the school, they'd go up to one of the junior black belts and go, excuse me, but could you just review this basic with me? I'm having trouble remembering that one. And the junior black belt might go, sure, or they might go, now maybe what you should ask one of those guys over there. They're like the
yeah,
real
yeah,
black
yeah.
belts, you know? So it's funny seeing that kind of dynamic within a school also, you know? But, I think too, it's important that everybody in the school should try to help each other.
Yeah, for sure.
And nobody should be picking on anybody, and nobody should be abusing their rank, as I like to say,
Mm.
you know?
But that's
Um,
again, that's coming from leading by example, right? If you're not like
100%,
that, then the students are not like that. Then
100%. One of the things that one of the best compliment I would ever get was someone would come in and do a seminar at my dojo. And at the end of the seminar, they'd take me on the side and go, all your students are nice. Like
mm,
everybody was so nice. And that's what I wanted to hear. I'd rather hear that they're nice than, oh, they're great martial artists. But everybody was nice. Everybody was respectful. Everybody was fun. Um, yeah, I mean, it should be like that. I think if you do that, you wind up having students a long time and it becomes almost like a family,
yeah,
and that's what you want. You want the dojo to become like a family, you know? So,
yeah. That's what we're striving for our dojo. And when I start teaching, I had a lot of advice that, oh no, you need to be professional. You cannot talk with your students. Don't go with them to pub afterwards. And that's not me. It's not gonna
yeah,
happen. We're gonna be family. We love each other.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's it.
we'd always be hanging out after class. Like class was finished, we'd stay an extra 15, 20 minutes just shooting the breeze. Um, we'd get together for different things, and then eventually, I'd get invited to somebody's wedding.
Mm.
So, I remember getting invited to one of the students' weddings, and me and my wife were there, and we got up to dance. And the students that were there were looking at me like, and they were like, "Oh my God, Sensei can dance? Sensei dances?" Yeah, Sensei can dance. But again, they see you in this role of Sensei in the dojo, and they have this kind of idea that you're always this
Mm.
serious guy, or you're this, or you're that. I like to say it that it's the idea that I'm always sitting in the lotus position, only eating rice. Like that's all I do, right? I'm not doing anything else in life. I don't enjoy life. So, yeah, I think the dojo becoming a family is important. I think it should be a family, 100%. You know, um, again, that to me is the real dojo. The fake dojo is the one that's only interested in signing up new people. That's
Mm.
all. That's his function. No, we need this amount of people, new people signed up every week, and okay, yeah. That's not a family atmosphere. It's a gym
Yeah.
atmosphere. It's like going to the gym, you know. The gym hopes you join the gym and never show up. And you're
Yeah.
still
And to
paying your
keep paying.
monthly dues. You're paying your monthly dues, but you never show up. And then they get other people to sign up. That's what they want. They don't want people to come to the gym. They want people to sign up. But
Mm.
I think as martial arts instructors, I think a good instructor, we want people to come and train. Like, yeah, sign up and come and train. We want you to train, right? We don't want you to um, we don't want to subtract your dues every month and you're not showing up. No, like come and train. You're paying to train. We want you to come and train. Come train. So yeah, I think it's a very different dynamic. So I think everything, I think all this martial arts stuff, like you said, I think it can be really good and I think it can be really bad. And I think, that's why, I did a podcast recently about, don't train with a bully, right? And
Mhm. I've seen it. Yeah.
got a lot of response, a lot more response than I ever thought it would get. And a lot of people, their response was, I was in a similar situation. I had a guy who treated me like that. So I think though now what's happening is I think people now, like in my case, what happened with me was my first instructor was treating me like garbage. And then I went to a seminar with a teacher from Japan.
Mhm.
Okay. My instructor was overweight, didn't train hard. Here's this instructor from Japan. He's 69 years old and he's thin, he's in shape. And he's an 8th-degree black belt in Jodo, Kendo, and Iaido. So he's doing a weekend seminar in all 3 disciplines. I was studying EI and Jodo. Okay. So first half of the day, he does Jodo. Second half of the day, he's going to do Kendo. Okay. So he goes through the warm-ups. And then what he starts doing is he starts engaging in matches with people, Kendo matches. So he starts with, there's probably 30 people there. He starts with the littlest kid and goes through everybody, fights. The guy's 69 years old. He fights everybody, one right after the other. The last 2 guys he fights are 6 dans.
Mhm.
And I watched him do this. And when he took the armor off, he wasn't breathing heavy. And I watched how he encouraged all the little kids. He let them score on him, you know?
Mhm.
And I remember, and just the way he acted and the way he talked to you, I was like, wow, this guy's very impressive. Why doesn't my teacher act like this? And that was the first crack in the armor. Okay, so now I could compare. Okay, here's this guy and here's this guy. Why does this guy treat everybody so nice? Why does this guy treat everybody so crappy? And that was the beginning of the end. So as I started to get exposed to real teachers, and I think now you have a lot of people that are getting exposed to real teachers. And if they have a bad one, they know they can find a good one. So I think you're going to see a lot of those bad teachers get weeded out. They're getting weeded out now. And you'll have hopefully a better quality of teacher, you know, because I'll be honest
Yeah,
with you,
well,
I've seen it in Japan too. I've seen teachers
mm.
that abuse students in Japan where I literally was sitting there shaking my head. Like, what is this guy doing? You know, I've never seen it in Okinawa, but I have seen it in Japan. So,
Well, I hope that it's going to be changing and the tide going to be changing to have a more kind of understanding and kind teacher.
right. Yeah. You know, I mean, you hear that about a lot of the older ways of teaching on Okinawa is, right? They would bring the teacher food to pay him
Mhm.
on different things, right? And they revered him as a wise figure, right? And you hear that a lot of the early pioneers of karate were pretty moral. You know, that some of them had pretty strong morals, and some of them made mistakes. I mean, look, everybody makes mistakes, right? We all do it,
Yeah.
right? But I'm just hoping that as time goes on, we see a better quality of instructor and a better quality of sensei, and we see less and less of these abuses that we see that go on. You know, so listen, Les, I appreciate you coming on,
Thank you. Thank you having me. Thank you
and
for opportunity to talk.
yeah, and listen, write more books. Um, I'll put a picture of your book up on the thumbnail, and
Thank you.
I'll put a link to the book in the description. The Anxious Sensei, very good. Short read. So those of you guys that don't like to read, it's a nice short read, but there's a lot of interesting information in there, and it's always interesting to see how someone struggled and rose above those struggles. So appreciate what you're doing. Keep up the good work, and I'll see you in a future podcast or something.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we're going to stay in touch.
All right, take care.
Hope you enjoyed that interview with Les Bupka. I always enjoy talking to Les. Outside the box thinker. Trains a little bit differently. Not a hardcore traditionalist, which again, nothing wrong with, whatever works for you. But interesting how he's used the martial arts as a vehicle to help people with their mental health, which I think is very admirable. Right? Consider getting his book, The Anxious Sensei. I liked it a lot. All right. As usual, please click that like, share, and subscribe button. Helps with the dreaded YouTube algorithm. Consider becoming a monthly member, supporting the channel. And hope you enjoyed this one. And I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.